Well, guys, if I never see the words Bodo and Glimt again in my life, I'll die a happy man because I feel like I've aged about 20 years over the last 180 minutes of this tie. Another disappointing night for Celtic, a 2-0 defeat tonight in Norway sees us lose 5-1 on aggregate. Yeah, we'll get in and chat about this, guys. We've got plenty to speak about. I think just before that, a wee bit of housekeeping. First of all, if you're on Facebook watching us, hello. This is, I think, the first time we've ever streamed live on Facebook as well as YouTube. So I don't know if there's any Facebook only people out there that like 67 Hail Hail. They can come across us. If you're new, maybe check us out on YouTube. We post every day, etc. We've also got a new member, just fitting on a night when Ange decided to change up the whole Celtic first team that we would get on a new member as well. We'll welcome Asim to 67 Hail Hail, and we'll kick you off with a nice easy question, mate. What went wrong tonight?
Cheers for having us on, Hamish. Big fan of the show. A big fan of your channel and all the work you guys do. Just unfortunate, obviously, to be on a night where such a disappointing performance and ultimately result. As soon as I think I spoke to you before the game, and when I seen the lineup, my hope kind of disappeared straight away. I was like you. I thought this was a winnable tie still, even at 3-1 down. And I felt like we could have given it a good go, given our European away performances in Europe this season. We often score, so I thought, if we can get that first goal, we're in with a shout. But as soon as I seen that lineup, you're missing too many key players, and I think the manager almost gave the tie up, and the players played like they gave the tie up. That first half was as poor as I've seen us this season.
Yeah, it was awful. If we go back to when the team came out, whatever it was, half past 4 or so. It was quite early, and we had all those changes. I think a lot of us were kind of surprised by that when we saw that. Ange had been talking it up all week, and Ange just in general. I mean, this is a guy who thought he could win the World Cup with Australia. I certainly didn't expect him to. I'm kind of toying whether to use the phrase "throw the towel in" tonight. It certainly had an air of that when we saw the team. Euan, it was a surprise, wasn't it?
I probably would use the phrase "throw the towel in." I think, and it's no disrespect to the players, the guys that came in from the fringes, but they're just not good enough at this level yet. There's some really curious decisions. I honestly thought from all that we heard going into this match that Ange Postecoglou was prioritising this competition, that we wanted to compete on all fronts, that it wasn't about necessarily rotating the squad and putting one competition above another. And that lineup, again, no disrespect to the likes of Scales and Welsh, but they just weren't good enough tonight. The lack of quality really showed. I know that's two players I really like, and I think will be good side players in the future, but both of them struggled. We lacked any dynamism in the middle. O'Reilly and Rogic as a partnership, we'll probably get into that, but the lineup, I was really disappointed, man, because like you, I've been quite excited about this competition, about this, about the potential in this competition, but I really do think, we were mentally, I think we conceded a lot before we even got on the pitch tonight.
Yeah.
You say you were excited about the competition, but how much money did you give UEFA for memorabilia? Because I'm sitting at about 60 quid, and I look like a bit of a dafty right now, I will admit. That Conference League hoodie is either getting thrown out in 10 minutes or it's going to try and see it through to next year with Eddie Howe mugs. It was a bit daft, but yeah, being serious, guys, do we think, Asim, that he just was looking at Sunday and Hibs, and that's the whole reason for it? And is that, understandable?
I think it must be, like you said, Ange has came across like he really fancied us to still have a good chance in this competition. And just given the way he spoke all season, like Euan said there, I was very surprised with that lineup. And there can be no other explanation. He obviously was focusing on Sunday. I know a lot of people, whether it's on kind of forums and group chats with friends, and some were of the same opinion that, it's fine, let's put it. I don't think they need to be mutually exclusive. I think we could have given it a right good go tonight and taken care of Hibs on Sunday. Obviously now, if we win on Sunday, this will be quickly forgotten about. That's the nature of this season. The league is the priority. I get that, but that was a winnable tie. I thought Bodo were very good. Tonight again, I thought they played in second gear, but they looked like a good outfit. But I still think if we played our full team tonight, we could have made a good go of that. They were pretty open themselves, and had we got that first goal, I still think we were in the tie.
I think that's one of the big frustrations, is that we didn't really put them under any pressure at any real point in the tie. I know people will look at the the start of the second half, and I really hope the narrative isn't Celtic were so much better in the second half. No. Because for me, we were better for about 8 or 9 minutes of the second half, and then I felt they got their control back in the game. I thought it was we were really good for those first 8 or 9 minutes. We had I think a couple of half chances, but nothing really major. But my big frustration over the course of the tie was we never really made them, put them in a real difficult position that they didn't want to be. It felt as if from the moment they scored that opener a week ago at Celtic Park that they were just in control of that tie. We looked lost. Even when we get the goal last week, to make it 2-1, we concede right away, and it just felt as if Bodo Glimt were a step too far for this team at the moment. If we go on to the actual game, Euan, I was really hoping tonight that Celtic were going to start with a real intensity, put some of the demons from last week, lay them to rest, and it just didn't happen at all. I get that he made a lot of changes, but we still had players in that park today. Rogic, O'Reilly, Maida, Giakoumakis off his hat-trick at the weekend. We had enough players there to cause them more hassle than we did in the first half. I mean, that first half, for as good as Ange has been this season, as good as Celtic have been under him, that was awful.
It had me reaching for my thesaurus, Hamish. Words like turgid, glacial. It was just, we couldn't string 2 passes together, and it was so frustrating to watch because we've seen how intensely the Celtic team can start. We've seen how good the movement can be, how good the passing can be, how connected these players seem to each other. And none of that was evident at all in that first half. There's a particular point where I think I don't want to pile on Beaton because I think he's generally been quite good this season, but he receives a throw in, and I think it just knocks off him and comes out of play. It was dreadful. It was really awful. And the person who'll be most frustrated about this, of course, is going to be Ange, because it was the antithesis to the type of football that he's had us play this season. I don't know why the Celtic team gets so nervous in the knockout stages, but that's how we looked. We looked sheepish. We didn't have that energy and that willingness to press the way we normally do, to win the ball back, within 5 seconds, to spring attacks, at breakneck speed like we normally try and do. None of that was there. And I mean, apart from team selection, I can't really explain why that is, to be honest.
Yeah, but before the tie, the big thing that was made of the tie, people previewing it, including ourselves, was that Bodo Glimt play such a similar style to Ange ball, if you want to call it that. Asim, was it just a case of them being so much better at it than us?
I think so. You need to remember this team's they've won the league twice now. They're quite well ahead in their progression in terms of how they want to play. So you could see that both last week and tonight. They're how we want to play, I think, under Ange, and how I'd hope we will play in Europe going forward. I think we've seen some really good football from us this season in spells and halves. We've had a couple of full good performances as well. The frustrating thing with these 2 ties, I don't think we've had a spell. I don't think we've had a spell of even a half, in both legs where I thought we've really shown what we can do. And it's hard for me to kind of contextualise, because I'm wondering, is this just because Bodo are a really good side, or have we just not turned up both legs? Because if you look at it, we played well in Betis. We played well in Leverkusen. So we played teams, I would say, that are better than Bodo away from home and looked well a match for those teams. So tonight in particular is hard to gauge, because I do think it's primarily the lineup. I think if we'd seen Jota, McGregor, Hatate, I don't know why he played Rogic and O'Reilly again together. I think it clearly didn't work last week and it wasn't going to work tonight. Juranovic, that's big players out. I would have liked to have seen us play that team, given it a go, even if we didn't get the result, but learn from it and see how are we developing. I just think tonight's almost a write-off, because with, like you say, Beaton and Forrest, who just again disappointed. I don't know how much we can take from that tonight. I thought we toiled against Wraith Rovers with that many changes, so it was only unexpected tonight that we were going to struggle as well, I thought.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you make, that tonight, what are the lessons you learned from that? You could maybe look at a couple of players and think maybe are they not good enough, certainly at the moment, for this level. But you know, it is one match tonight, and we were up against a side who I think they just made us so uncomfortable at all stages. Everything we're good about and have been under Ange, playing out from the back, the way they pressed us was just so efficient. They just had. It wasn't even like the kind of tiki taka type pressing for Barcelona those years ago when everyone just runs to the ball. It was really organised, and they would just all push up. And we just looked lost. The amount of times Joe Hart gave it away, players, Starfelt, Welsh giving the ball away, Beaton putting it out the park, etc. We just looked completely lost. But then at the other end of the park, they were able to play out. Our pressing looked really disorganised as well. I just thought over the two legs, but especially tonight, that we just looked so unsettled. We got our first comment in for Facebook. There, guys, I try and find it. Hello, Paul Dawson, watching us on Facebook. Not doing a great deal of work for the Facebook community with that all capitals letters. I feel like I need to kind of take a step back a wee bit. But he's saying, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Full strength side tonight. Injuries. Ange gets slated. Plays below strength side. Gets slated. Come on, guys. Sunday's imperative. Sunday is imperative. And well done, Paul, in being our first Facebook comment. Is it worth actually chatting about the game, guys? I feel like usually we discuss the moments in the game, but it kind of feels a bit pointless tonight, given that the tie's over and we probably all want to move on to Sunday. We'll maybe spend a couple of minutes, Euan. Both goals tonight, just typical Celtic goals to concede in Europe.
It's just really basic stuff, and it was the same last week. Guys just kind of like, if there is marking happening, then it was kind of absent over both ties. Guys
second goal.
It was, yeah. I mean, I don't want to say it came out of nothing because they did have a good spell of possession, leading up to that, but it wasn't a kind of remarkable clear-cut chance where you think like, oh, there's a goal in here. It was poor, and it's surprising because the amount of improvement we've seen defensively from Celtic this season has been, it's been night and day. Let's not make any, let's not get that wrong, but just very, very poor, very, very basic things over the last 2 weeks. And I have to think it's a mental thing. I don't know whether it's just the pressure of the environment of the tie itself. I don't know what it is, but there just seems to be something that's not quite working defensively, and I just don't know what that is.
I just think it goes back to what I said. They made us so uncomfortable. This Celtic team, whenever we play domestically, we're in control. It's the one thing Ange goes on about, every press conference after a game: control, control, control. And I don't think we had control at any stage of that game tonight at all. Even when we were knocking the ball about, you were just waiting on someone giving it away. I think the pitch and the overall environment there certainly has a factor. That is a factor because their record there is no coincidence. They make it incredibly difficult. Their players looked stronger than ours. They looked quicker than ours. They looked more alert than ours. It was just a disappointing night. Was there any positives, Asim? Any players that impressed you at all?
Well, first half, like I say, I think that was as poor as we played all season. I think there was Joe Hart made a couple of really good saves again, which kept the score down in that first half. But in terms of the outfield players, like you said, I thought Beaton was really good on Sunday when he came on, and I was happy enough with him playing today. But I thought he was really poor in the first half. The amount of times giving sloppy possession away. But like I say, I don't think you can pick any pass marks from the outfield in the first half.
Second half, any half-time subs?
Yeah, I think McGregor coming on straight away, you see the quality he's got. He calms everyone around him, and I think he is probably our most important player individually because I think when he plays, we have a composure about us, which isn't there when he's not present. Like you said, we had a 10-minute spell. I thought Abada looked a bit more lively. And then if Maida scores, I know ifs, buts and maybes, but if Maida scores, we've got 25 minutes to go at that point. Again, it's just an opportunity to slightly put a bit more pressure on them. I don't think for any minute we looked like we were going to recover that tie tonight. But, again, it might have changed the overall feeling towards the end of the game if we'd at least given it a nice, good go for half an hour. But ultimately, it was just kind of petered out into, the kind of usual disappointment we've seen away from home in Europe.
Yeah, I think we had a couple of chances. We had the Maida chance, and we had the one for Abada as well that he kind of put over the bar. I think it was still maybe 1-0 at that stage, if it might have been 2-0. But I thought McGregor was a big positive. I mean, the difference in our play when he's on that park, everything is just far more crisp. As I say, it was only really for 8 or 9 minutes, and then I kind of felt we lost control of the game again. But he's a player who just has to be in the Celtic team for every big game going forward. I don't care who we're playing a few days later. It's all domestic football now. He has to play, as far as I'm concerned, every single game between now and the end of the season. He can get his rest in the summer. Just overall, it's one thing for me to say that the league is a priority, and I know we've had a lot of comments already tonight saying, it's all about the league. For me, that lets the team off a little bit tonight, because I just thought it was just an unacceptable performance and result, and it was the same last week. We looked completely incapable of dealing with what they were throwing at us, and I just feel, making that comment and saying, but the league's all that matters. Yes, strictly that is true. The league is, the main thing that matters this season. But I just really hope that this team under Ange going forward next season and beyond is not just going to be a team that focuses in Scotland, because we've done that for too long. The disappointments we've had in Europe over the last 10 years, it's been really poor. And we've kind of got away with it a bit because we've been winning all the domestic trophies. And listen, that's fine. If we end up with a treble at the end of this season, or even just the league and the cup we've already won, people aren't going to remember tonight or care about tonight. But you want Celtic to be doing, so much more. Euan, do we think, Ange is going to get this right next year? Is it just a case of difficult circumstances this year?
I'm in two minds, because I do sort of sympathise with the whole Europe is a free hit thing this season. But equally, when we've taken it seriously, and when we've applied lessons that we've learned from European football, this team has improved exponentially. I mean, after that shellacking we got off by our Leverkusen at home, the performances after that were so much better. We were able to beat Real Betis, we were able to beat Ferencváros, and our domestic form improved for that. We're a better team when we're playing in Europe. We're matching ourselves against levels that we might not play against in Scotland. We can only get better for playing in Europe. So it kind of rankled with me, this idea that the league and like Asim said, that it's mutually exclusive. I think your domestic form improves if you're able to play and go against teams that are of a decent level in Europe. I just think those two things are intertwined, as opposed to saying, well, we put all our eggs in the league basket, and maybe that's entitled. Maybe that's an entitled thing of wanting to win every game, all that stuff. But I just don't think you can separate these things. I think it's all a progression. And on the one hand, you can take positives from our campaign in general and say, well, we've learned a lot. This team's very different. We've gone against a good standard. The team will only be better for that. But to lose over 2 legs against Bodø Glimt, I just don't necessarily think that's good enough, to be honest.
Where do you rate the European campaign this year, Asim? If I give you out of 10, what are you giving it?
I think 6, 5, 6. I think, I remember when we got put out by Midtjylland, obviously at that point I think we all just thought we're not going to even get into European football, potentially, because I think we had obviously the Jablonec game, which was fine, took care of that, but the AZ was a tough one, and we came through that pretty well. I thought we played well in the first leg. Obviously lost the second one, but in the group stages, like you say, after that Leverkusen game, there was good performances in there. Home and away to Betis, good. Beating Ferencváros home and away. And then obviously the Leverkusen away game, which I think we were 10 minutes to go, we were 2-1 up there as well. So I think that's what's almost led to such high expectations going into this tie. Whereas at the start of the season, we would have all said, look, we've got a whole new squad. We've got we're in such a transition that we would have almost maybe sacrificed Europe. The way I agree with you, Hamish. I don't think normally. I think that's too easy. Just a get out clause, or it's focus on the league. But this season, it was almost the case that it's going to take time. But I think because of how well we've progressed under Ange in such a short space of time, and then how we've been since January, we almost raised the expectation to the point that we should be beating Bodo. If not, at least doing a much better job than we have in both legs. So I think that's where the disappointment comes. Whereas in isolation, it's been, I would say, an okay campaign in Europe, given the turnaround in players and that we've had since the summer.
Yeah, I mean, I think our season will be defined by whether we win the league or not. It wasn't really going to be defined about Europe or by Europe. Euan, you got a rating out of 10?
No. No,
That's fine, mate.
I mean, it's
Right.
again, yeah. We've learned a lot. I think this team's a lot better for having played these games, for having played the teams that we've played. I certainly don't regret it, but I think, yeah, about five's probably fine. I think.
I'll give it a 5 as well. I think we've had some great moments in Europe this year.
Yeah,
But I just think the defending's let us down. We just concede far too many goals. Another 5 over 2 games against Bodo Glimt. God knows how many we conceded in the group stage of the Europa League. So that's clearly something we need to improve on. Maybe that's just something that's just not going to ever get better under Ange in Europe because of the way he plays and the calibre of opposition. But to finish, guys, hopefully we've uttered the words Bodo Glimt for the final time, and we can move on now to domestic football for good now until the end of the season. And as I say, we could still be looking back, I think, in one of the greatest seasons I can remember if we managed to win the league this year. And that Norwegian team will be a distant memory if we do that. How are we feeling about Sunday, Asim, given that CCV, Jota, Juranovic, Hatate have all been rested fully tonight? We've had rest into the legs of the likes of McGregor and Abada as well. It's another huge game, but if we win that, I think people will already kind of be over tonight.
Yeah, I think so. I think I wonder if that was part of Ange's thinking, that we've toiled a wee bit in the last couple of domestic games, and I wonder if that played into his thinking with the lineup tonight, just that we were maybe a bit jaded, and he really wanted to kind of freshen them up. But I totally agree. I think if we Hibs away, we were brilliant there earlier in the season, especially that first half at Easter Road was one of our best halves of the season. So yeah, I think most fans are aware enough that, yeah, like we said, the league is imperative this season. This is probably one of our tougher games in the next few weeks. We've got obviously this and then Livingston, but one game at a time.
Don't mention teams playing in yellow with artificial surfaces.
But no, I think with bringing back all the kind of players you've mentioned there, I'm pretty confident we can go to Easter Road, get the gap up to, I think it'll be 6 before they play later in the afternoon, so put a bit of pressure on. And yeah, like the mood kind of changes so quickly. After last Thursday, we were all disappointed, and then by the weekend, we extended our league our lead in the league again. So here's hoping for more of that on Sunday.
And just finally, the good news is that we're well used to this as Celtic fans. I mean, the last 10 years has basically been made up of European disappointment followed by domestic success. That has literally been, certainly the last 5 or 6 years, Copenhagen, disappointing night, but I can't remember being too raging about that, a few months later when we were winning the league, and ones prior to that, Zenit and Valencia. Again, I can't remember being too gutted when we were lifting trebles those seasons. So as Celtic, disappointing tonight, but we still just have this massive opportunity. We're now looking at 11 games in the league and a maximum of 3 in the Scottish Cup, 14 games, one last big push, and potentially you're looking at a treble.
Firstly, I would say speak for yourself, Hamish, because I'm permanently raging. That's just how I am. But I think you're right. And we look at when we got turned over by Bayer Leverkusen, the reaction to that was excellent. So we've got to hope that tonight was a disappointment, but the players seem to learn from these things. And Ange seems really good at picking up the players after disappointment. And like you say, we've got a historical precedent of bouncing back from these kind of disappointments and going on a run. And that's what we've got to hope is going to happen. We've got enough. I think we've got enough to achieve what we want to do domestically. I just don't think the squad's quite there for Europe. But, for all the disappointment of tonight, we're still very much a work in progress. And like you say, it's going to be a monumental end of this season if we achieve everything that, that the supporters want to. It's still going to be monumental. So, yeah, here's hoping. I mean, we've just got to hope it's the same as before and kind of all good from here. And then we look at Europe again next season with maybe a bit more optimism and a bit less naivety.
And, if we do win the league, the Champions League, it would be the group stage. That'll feel very far away from where we are right now, having just been knocked out of the Conference League. Final comment, Asim, on your debut.
Yeah, like I said, obviously not the best of nights in terms of the outcome, but like I said, I see if this was this time next year under Ange, I'd be a lot more gutted than I am just now. I think there's a bit of perspective in terms of where we've come, and like you said, we're 3 points clear of the table. Who'd have thought that? If back at the start of August, And I'd like Ewan said, I think we've got the squad now, and I think we've got the quality that, we've got the momentum. That was a disappointing thing with tonight. You don't want to lose that kind of momentum, and hopefully, like you say, Sunday's it's a big game to go straight into. So just kind of lift the spirits again. A win there, and like you said, this will be kind of forgotten about for a while. So yeah, confident that we'll pick up the 3 points on Sunday and get back to winning ways.
Definitely, bring it on. We'll have a big preview to that game on the channel on Saturday. We've got a good video coming out tomorrow as well that you might like. So that should be good. Remember to give us a sub as well. Maybe if you're new to the channel, maybe you're just coming across us on Facebook. Hello. Thanks for tuning in on a disappointing night for Celtic. But, the main priority this season is the league. I realise I've become everything I hate. About 10 minutes ago, I'm slagging off people that talk like that, and I've now turned into that person. But hey, I'm a fickle football fan. Thanks, guys. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll speak to you soon.